us, leave your field to flower. Join us, leave your cheese to sour. Join us, come and waste an hour or two. We've got magic to do just for you. You. Welcome to Studio Tenn Talks. I'm Patrick Cassidy, and I'm the Artistic Director for Studio Tenn Talks. And here we are. This is our 8th week of doing this show, and I want to recap the 7 weeks before tonight. And tonight's guest is the perfect to cap these 8 weeks. But we had Rex Smith, Susan Egan, Adam Pascal from Rent, Emily Skinner, Jason Danieli. Last week we had the 9-time Tony-nominated director Scott Ellis. We have Norm Lewis coming up. We have Victor Garber coming up. It has been truly amazing, and because you guys are tuning in and watching and building what we are just loving doing, and it's just going to get better and more. And tonight, well, before I get to tonight's guest, because it's such a long introduction, he's too good. I want you guys to either write in emails or give us questions or whatnot, but write us text, whatever. We want to do cabarets. That's how we're going to start to come back in terms of live performance. We're going to do cabarets, and we're going to do them with the people that have been guests on this show and are going to be guests. I want to know who you'd like to see, including them or not, but who you'd like to see in cabarets. We've already got a facility we're going to do it at, but I'll talk about that later. So, and by the way, I just have to do a donation shout out for this. Remember, we are not doing live performances now. Studio Tenn survives on donations. You guys have been incredibly generous. I ask you to keep coming. At the bottom of our screen, the show will go on. We have a campaign, and by clicking the donate button above or by messaging Studio Tenn Talks, you too can support us in every way, and I thank you in advance. Now, without further ado, this gentleman is a Tony Award-winning Broadway producer. He is the artistic director for the St. Louis Muni Opera. Boy, are we going to talk about that. His productions have received more than 96 Tony Award nominations and 29 Tony Awards. Some past credits include Thoroughly Modern Millie, Legally Blonde, Bring It On, the musical, Fun Home, and American Utopia. Upcoming, he has Plaza Suite. Received the Commercial Theater Institute's Robert Whitehead Award for Outstanding Achievement in Commercial Theater Producing. Co-head of Fox Theatricals with Kristen Kasky, has produced more than 21 Broadway musicals and plays, national tours, off-Broadway plays, and London productions. Fun Home won 5 2015 Tony Awards, including Best Musical, and was also a finalist for the 2014 Pulitzer Prize. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome, I'm so honored, Mr. Mike Isaacson. And there he is.
Hello.
How are you, Mike? Was that embarrassing enough for you?
Completely embarrassing. It was ridiculous.
Sorry. Facts are facts. And thank you so much for being here, pal.
Oh, are you kidding? Of course.
I can't thank you enough. You are, as I said to him before we were talking off camera, I said, you are now my teacher. I want to learn from you. I am the grasshopper, and you are the teacher.
Well, I mean, the interesting thing in producing theater, executive producer, artistic director, there is no textbook. There is no, it is sort of all shared knowledge, conversations on phone, mentoring. That is how it's done. There's, people always say, how do I become a producer? And, I'm always saying that the first thing is just get into a theater in any aspect and just look around and learn. It's an odd thing that way. There just really is no manual.
And when you started, because it's funny, you said you were when I got my first artistic director job in California, you were the first phone call I made. And you basically said that, and you said something very interesting to me, which I thought was, I didn't forget. You said, it's a very lonely job. Mm. And I've been, obviously I'm still, getting my feet wet all the time, but I understand what you mean like that. I mean, any kind of job where you have to look at so many things and make so many decisions and all that stuff, it becomes it's you.
Well, it's also and I'm sure there's probably other professions where people feel this, but you are responsible for everything and many days in control of nothing.
Oh, it's great.
So you're trying to, just sort of set a path and create a journey for the work and people in the institution and make sure you're there. But, sometimes it's going to do what it's going to do. And you sort of, I wouldn't say I spent up until this job, I spent all of my career, either the early part of the career, I was the guy in the back of the room, nobody knew, putting the coal in the boiler, and I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
Loved it. Like, just making it happen. I didn't care who got the credit, whatever. This is exciting. Then my partnership with Kristen Cassidy, that's always been two equal, and that's who I've still to this day done all my Broadway work with.
Mm-hmm.
And that's got its own rhythm. This, however, was, even though I have incredible collaborators and partners throughout the institution, this was the most solo I've had been. Like, your name's there, it's alone, the buck stops with you, 10,000 people a night. At the end of the day, if they don't like it, it's because of Mike Isaacson, right?
Yeah, I hear you.
And that was a very hard thing to get used to and accept. And then once I knew what it was like, okay, we can do this.
Well, let's talk about that, because I obviously, I have such history with the Muni, and the Muni itself is the most historic thing I know about in theater. First of all, I want to show the Muni. I've got a clip, and you can narrate a little bit. We can talk about it, but it's an overall. It must be a drone view of it. But so let's throw that clip up there. This is the St. Louis Muni Opera. Now, Mike, it's in what park?
Forest Park.
It's in Forest Park,
right in the center of St. Louis. So it originally was a civic idea. It was based on an idea. It was a mayor's idea. We will be a better city, a better community if we gather in the middle of everything and experience these things together. Mm-hmm. So its civic idea and its community idea has always run parallel to its artistic idea and the creation of the work. The two are never, ever separated through 102 years.
And how many seats exactly is it?
It's just shy of 11,000 seats, and 1,500 a night are free. So people line up and they have a free seat. And then the section right in front of that, they're usually priced about what a movie is, $12, $15, somewhere in there. So it has built into its history and its mission accessibility. And then we also have all these programs, which are amazing, where for women in shelter and people in disabilities with homes and things and those kind of communities, we actually give them the tickets and make sure they have transportation to get to the theater. So that idea is embedded in what it's always been. And
you do, what is it, 7 shows during the summer?
7 shows, 7 major musicals.
I know, I'm not major, yeah. They're gigantic.
Yeah. It's a little insane. I mean, in the world, ridiculous is perfect. But, I say this, if you looked at this on a piece of paper, 10,000 seats, outdoor, summer, massive productions of an unparalleled level, 12 days to create them and do them and get them up. It makes no logical sense, right? I mean, it really doesn't make any sense. But its power is that it doesn't make sense. Yet everybody has been a part of it, wanted to maintain for all these decades. I mean, I'm sure you feel this with Studio Tenn sometimes. You sort of serve as a shepherd, but there's things at play you have no control over.
Oh, completely.
And that's part of it too.
Yeah. And you're right. And that's, well, we both know about, we've had, none of us as producers or artistic directors have had any control about what we have to do now. How do we, which is why we're at. So I want to talk about, again, my history. So my history with the Muni is pretty amazing because, as you know, I got my equity card in 1977. I was 15 years old playing Rolf in The Sound of Music. And there's a photograph right there. It's a little blurry. I was 15 and the girl playing Liesl was 27. That's another talk show completely. But but there's me in my little sweater. And I was playing Rolf in The Sound of Music. And my mother, Shirley Jones, was playing Maria. And there she is right there with the guitar. And she doesn't have her fingers on the right strings. But to her right, where her right elbow is, that is Sarah Jessica Parker playing Brigitte. Okay, so you know all this, but I wanted to give a setup for that. So I remember, Mike, in those days, and we can talk about the transformation, you didn't have those big fans, and you'll explain those. It was very hot, and there were a lot of bugs on the stage flying around because, you know, the summer heat in St. Louis. And I remember, you know, singing, "You are 16 going on set." And at one point I opened my mouth and something flew in. And I went, this is theater in the summer. This is summer theater. Now, since then, I know there have been vast and massive improvements, but I want to say before you tell me some of those, including the fans, that I have told every actor I know that if you ever get the chance, beg, go for free, and go do a Muni show if you're lucky enough, because it literally is Broadway summer camp. It is the greatest. The way you treat actors, the way you treat directors, the way you treat the cast and crew is truly amazing, and everybody should be fortunate enough to experience it.
Oh, that's so kind. It's very kind of you, Patrick. I'm very moved by that. Yeah, I mean, it's, I think, you know, again, sort of going to what you're talking about, the leadership idea and artistic director, I realized early on the only way for this to happen is you just, for myself and for everybody, you can't let fear anywhere into it because it's just going to get in the way. Mm-hmm. So the approach has to be, we're all really talented. You're here for a reason. We all believe in each other. Let's just do what we know we can do. Let's do it with everything we've got. And we're going to give it to 10,000 people on a Monday night, and it's going to be great. And to just get all the sort of, you know, because it's a hard job and it's a hard life, and people can get in their heads and the fear. And we just sort of set a tone of, look, we're just going to do this and see where it takes us. And that journey is everything. And so I work very hard at that, like, which you'd think it'd be the opposite given 7 shows and all the pressure and all the timelines, but that would just destroy everything. And, you know, the audience is extraordinary. I mean, there's families who've been going to this, you know, theater for generations. So they love musicals and they love the ritual and they're so happy to be there. And when you really give something on that stage, you've experienced it. Feels like a 200-seat black box. I mean, it's right there.
Yeah.
And very powerful. So, you know, we've done so much. There's a new stage and there's fans in the audience and everything, but all of it is about really, you know, where we succeed at the Muni and where we succeed at Studio Tenn is that if you come in and you give us the gift of your time, that we're going to give you everything we've got of what we can do, but also who we are. Oh. And hopefully if we've done that right, you're going to leave just a little bit different, a little bit better. And I'm sure you experience that there all the time. It's what we set out to do.
Yeah. And it's what, and in the theater and what we all want to do and why we got into the theater to begin with. You know, it's so funny. If I wasn't even in the theater and I moved to St. Louis, the first thing I would do would get a subscription to the Muni summer. It's because it's truly an experience where it is in the park, going in there, like I told you, for a performer, I mean, just the rehearsal process alone, you feel like, because you have and how big is the orchestra? I mean, the orchestra for Aida was. Yeah,
it's like 20. We use the Broadway orchestration, so it's 26, 28 pieces, depending on what it is. Yeah, we go full. We do, everything's full. Everything's robust, right?
Yeah. And how big is, and just again for our viewers, how big is the actual stage?
Oh boy, that's a good question that I should know.
Where's my Muni manual?
I mean, whatever a Broadway stage is, double it.
And it's massive.
Yeah.
And I'll show a little clip. But yeah, it's a massive, massive experience. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was going on the treadmill because I knew I'd have to get ready to run around that stage. It's a massive. But it is also, like you said, you have the feeling there's an intimate quality where you're connecting to the audience, and those almost 11,000 people connect to you. And they love it.
There's something, you know, when you talk about things that are there, you go, oh, there's a power here at work, and you just let it be. The outdoor thing, I mean, you know, we started 8:15, and usually, I mean, at least for the first 3 or 4 shows, the sun is still up. And so that descent, the audience goes into that together, into the show, which has an incredible power. Mm-hmm. And, you know, you've experienced, there's some times where, you know, a beautiful song, a full orchestra, a gorgeous soloist, a summer night, the stars, the trees, the sky, you're like, come on.
Yeah.
You know, so it does, for, you know, when we hit when everything, the stage and the world surrounding it can really find unity. I remember I really learned that my first season. We opened with Thoroughly Modern Millie, which I produced on Broadway. Start with What You Know, right? And I remember in the second act, there's that pas de deux between Jimmy and Millie. I turn the corner. It's so beautiful, and they're out on the ledge. And it was Terry Kelly and Andrew Szymanski. And on the second night, he sort of leaned her down, and a breeze swept up her skirt, and it just blew in this most poetic manner. It was Sid Charisse stuff, right?
Oh my gosh.
And you just felt this thing happen. And I thought, well, you can never rehearse that.
Right.
It is, you know, so there's occasionally these things that become the gifts that make the work richer or bigger or very singular.
And that's, I mean, in itself, live entertainment or live theater, it does that. But then add the aspect about being outside and having those other elements that you can't, you're right. That's so unique to that experience. Okay, so I did Sound of Music, 1977. I got my equity card. Then when I got out of high school, I decided this is what I want to do for a living. I went to New York, blah, 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 blah. I didn't get to work there. And I know Paul Blake. He was the former artistic director. Paul was the artistic director in Santa Barbara for a theater called the Libero. And I played the dentist in Little Shop of Horrors. And we were good friends. He was very good friends with my brother. For some reason, I never worked during the Paul Blake era. Not because he didn't want me to. I just wasn't available. You take over the helm, and you guys call my agent, and you offer me to come in and play Zoser in Elton John's Aida. I think we have a picture of that too. Let's see. Is it there? Oh, there it is. But there it is. Yes, it is something out of a magic. I'm playing some sort of magician, Fellini, something. But anyway, so I get this part, and I get to come back there after all those years and experience everything that I'm talking about. And something very unique happened. And I want you to talk about this was you hired me to do 8 performances. I ended up doing 6.5 because of the rain.
Right.
So I want you to talk about that. And I want you to talk about, because that backstage thing that happens, what that crew there does with those machines and how they do it. I mean, this was a downpour, like monumental, but talk about that, because it's amazing.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling, but there is, the crew, stagehands, wardrobe, lighting, their families have been working there for generations. There's such a sense of pride and joy in the work and to be there. So they got a system down, and backstage, everyone just sort of like the button gets clicked. We see it. Denny Reagan, who's my partner, comes running the stage manager, and everyone knows what to do. But essentially what happens is we get the cast off, the audience goes and stands under these coverings we have on the side. We're sort of on the phone directly to the weather service, directly to the epicenter, which is in Iowa, I believe. And they can tell us within 6 minutes, this will happen, 8 minutes will this, blah, blah, blah. That's being, signal. Everyone's stage manager, everyone's talking about that backstage, what the anticipation is. Sound is checking all the microphones. Actors are in their dressing room having the time of their lives. And then the crew goes into major action on the stage, where they mop the entire stage, which is its own sort of amazing ballet. And what I love about that was every little boy who got dragged to the theater that night who didn't want to be there comes running down. Oh, I can't believe this is the coolest thing ever, right? Watch these guys with mops and clean and move and fans, and everything goes into, and then, the goal is get the show back up and running and get it moving. Statistically, we actually usually only have one show a season, generally as a rule, where we have to completely pull the plug.
Right.
A lot of times we stop and start, and the audience stays. It's remarkable. I remember one time we literally finished a performance of My Fair Lady at 1 a.m, and there were 5,000 people in the audience. It's just incredible.
Well, it happened with us. I mean, we unfortunately, the one we got, and it was my wife was there. She had flown with my kids to see the show, and we got through the first act, and we started on, it was towards the, I guess the end of the first act. Oh yeah, towards Dance with the Robe. And the kids were out there and they were doing that song, and it's very physical. It's all that African dancing and all. But it was raining. And, and you guys go, and I know you're watching and making sure everybody's safe. And there's something, just like what you said about the wind blowing up and the dress and the romance of that. There's something extraordinary about that, where the rain is coming down and you're watching these performers do what they love to do, and granted still be safe, but you go, it's only the experience that outdoor theater on that size could generate.
Well, it also goes with the core you talked about what is theater and why the Muni's important and why Studio Tenn's important, is that if it goes right, if you're sitting in a seat, everything has gone away and you realize at some fundamental level, I'm alive right now. Mm-hmm. This is happening now. And with all due respect to film and television, it's never going to happen with that.
Never.
Only happens in the theater. Mm-hmm. And so when you have a moment like that, it's almost like, you've been in the past when there's an accident on stage or something else clicks in for the audience. Like this greater sort of sense of drama and reality, and everybody locks in. So when we have those moments, people will, when I run into somebody, they'll be like, "Oh, I've been going to the Muni for 20 years. I love it so much. Let me tell you about the time the cow pooped on the stage." I'm like, really? 140 shows, and that's what they're going to tell me about. But it is what it is.
But that's the specialness of it. I talked about that on this show, that my first Saturday night on Broadway in Pirates of Penzance, I split my pants, and I had to stand there with a seam split all the way down to my ankle, singing this, very serious love song duet with Maureen McGovern, and the whole audience knew it and they could see it, but they remembered it. And I had somebody come up to me years later and say, "I was there that Saturday night when you split your pants." Yeah. So that's what live theater and the beauty of it. So, okay, so now the Muni is 102 years. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So I had the incredible honored privilege to perform at the 100-year gala. And what a moment. What a moment. Heather Headley and Matthew Morrison hosting, and Tommy Tune and Cheetah Rivera and, oh gosh, Ken Page. It was a massive people that you had there. I couldn't believe it. And I got to do what, so dear to me, Music Man, to do a little bit of trouble. I think we have a little clip of that too.
What kind of conversation goes on while they're loafing around that hall? Then we tried out Vivo, trying out Cubits, trying out tailor-mades like cigarette feeds, and bragging all about how they're gonna cover up a telltale breath with sense. And one fine night, they leave the pool hall, headed for the dance at the Armory, libertine men and scarlet women, and ragtime, shameless music that'll drag your son, your daughter, with the arms of a jungle animal instinct, mass hysteria. Friends, the idle brain is the devil's playground. Trouble!
Oh, we got trouble!
Right here, River City!
Right here, River City!
With a capital T and that rhymes with P and that stands.
And little Harold Hill.
Yeah.
And again, a gift that I got to do that. A gift. Tell me about that evening. I'll tell you just the wrap up. I sat with Megan, Tommy Tune, and Cheetah Rivera, and my wife till 3:00 in the morning. Cheetah told me about working with Jerome Robbins in the original West Side Story. She showed us a picture of her in the Beatles, and Tommy I'd known for years, but that was an extraordinary moment, the 100-year gala.
Yeah, it was an incredible night, and that the show, as it went along from segment to segment, I was so proud of it on so many levels, because some of the talents we were raising, Matt Kunkel and Michael Baxter together, like Cheetah, everybody knew we were a part of something special, right? But for the audience, as it went on, that thing really had an undertow of power to it. Like, you began to really see the accomplishment of this institution in people's lives and what it meant for people on stage, backstage, in the audience. And yeah, it was quite. It was quite that. I remember when it was all done, I was standing out in the house, and people were lined up. They wanted to talk to me. And I remember this guy walked up to me. He goes, "You gave this city a gift. I don't know. Like, it was one of those things, like, you literally say, you had to be there. Like, there was something in the air, what the audience was receiving, and, and then a finale with fireworks like you couldn't believe, and celebratory and joyous. But yeah, it was a special night, and you stole the show. You did.
Oh, thank you.
Oh,
I mean, I told you my history with that. It's such a part of my heart. I mean, you get your equity card at a theater, you remember it for the rest of your life, and then getting to do it and seeing the evolution of it, and then getting just to work with friends and people. And you said something which is such a credit to you, Mike, which is that in this wake of having to deliver a show in 12 days, and they're doing them on the week, and they're so massive, and things like raining can happen, and you know, and all of the things that can go wrong and lead to tremendous pressure, and yet you are like, you create this atmosphere that is so cool and so inviting and so calming. You do that. So whatever you're doing, whatever's going on inside, if it's the opposite, we do not see.
Well, that's you know that. And so, you know, there's that moment when the merd may hit the fan and everyone freezes and they look over out of the corner of their eye at you. And if they see you're calm, they think, I guess we're okay. Okay, we can handle this. We can go on. We can do that. You may be doing the scream inside, which I very often am. Although in time I've sort of learned, you know, we've opened shows. I remember my second season, we opened with Spamalot, and Eric Idle came, right?
Oh my gosh. Oh.
And it poured rain the 3 days before the opening.
Oh no.
And it rained until 7:30 that night, and suddenly it stopped. We had no choice. We had to go. And I go out there because I did do a curtain speech the first show of the season, last season. And I'm like, welcome to the opening night of the season, the Muni. Everyone goes, welcome to the opening night of Spamalot. Welcome to the tech rehearsal of Spamalot. Welcome to, like, I just was like, look at folks. I'm not sure what's going to happen tonight, but we did it. And you know, you just tell the audience, here's what we're having, here's what we're going to do, and join us in whatever that is. And you know what? It made it special. And there's some hilarious stories out of there. I don't know, you know who Sarah Meal is? Amazing Broadway dancer. She was in Dolly with Bet.
Okay.
She was in the show. She had like the lead. It was Dennis Jones who directed and choreographed. She had like the lead dance position, and there was this little dance with the grail, with the cup, and then she was supposed to go off, and this big mountain was supposed to come on, you know, all this stuff, and the mountain was not coming on, right? But she's not there with this cup. The orchestra just begins to vamp, and she figures, great, dance solo for Sarah Meal. Oh. And this like Cassie in a chorus line moment in the middle of Spamalot, and I'm like this, and Eric Idle's like, I don't remember that.
Again, live theater.
Yeah.
The beauty of live theater.
You know, we took a few liberties. What are you gonna do?
I'll tell you one quick moment. I don't know so I did company with Carol Burnett. She played Joanne, I played Bobby. It was at the Long Beach Civic Light Opera. And there was a moment in the second act where, you know, the cigarette thing where they're at the bar, and right before she sings Ladies Who Lunch. Well, the cigarettes were not there. The prop was not there. And the whole scene is talking about smoking. Bobby, you should smoke, blah, 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 blah. Well, I didn't know what to do. I was like a deer in headlights. And Carol, the other actor playing her husband, went to get the prop. But in the time, we had to improvise. And so Carol said, so, Bobby, what did you do today? And I said, I went to the zoo, which I had that day. She said, oh, well, I bought another dress. Now, Carol Burnett was known, her costume designer was Bob Mackie. And he made those great, you know, in the back, those great V's that came to the back, which showed all the back. She said, and she got up and she turned around and she said, I got this brand new dress. Don't you like it, Bobby? And I said, yes, it's beautiful, Joanne. She says, the only problem is I put it on wrong. I put it on backwards because it just made it be and the whole audience knew that we were improvising, and they went into hysterics. Yeah. And again, the joy of doing live theater.
Time to Carol Burnett, though. She and Rock Hudson played I Do, which you know is a 2-character musical at the Muni. They did
at the Muni.
At the Muni, right? 2-character musical, Muni, right? So as legend have it, she goes back to the show that fall because, you know, in that era, they did their sitcom or the variety show and they did summer stock. Everybody toured. That was the culture, right? So she goes back, she tells her writers about this, and you can find it on YouTube. There's this skit where she and Harvey Korman are doing a play in a massive outdoor theater. And that's all it is. So wonderful and joyous. You can, if you do, you can find it. And that was based on her telling the writer's stories of the Muni.
And you have, tell them, everybody, about, you have, because I know my mother's on one, you have like plaques of people that have worked there for years and years and years, right? All over the
yeah, we have these really wonderful plaques in this hall called the Muni Hall of Fame. And it's writers and performers and artists who have had an impact on the American musical theater, Hollywood, who have been a part of the Muni story. And your mother is up there because, I mean, it's, I mean, I told you this, you and I, when we were hanging out, talked about it. For St. Louis, the Muni in the 70s was Shirley Jones.
Yeah.
She did, I want to say 3 or 4.
She did Showboat.
Showboat?
Yeah, she did.
Sound of Music.
Yep, Sound of Music. She did, I think she did 3 or 4, but she also did, I think they did like an honor, not an honor thing, but she came in and she did stuff. I mean, she's been there from the early 70s, 70s on, maybe even the late 60s. I don't know.
Yeah. But she is so associated with the Muni of that era that, you know, people, which is why, again, for that audience, having you on stage for the 100th, well, you told those stories too, but it was also that idea of legacy and generation that was so powerful.
Tell me about this season. So what happened? I know you guys were holding on like so many of us.
Yeah. So, you know, when we all went, oh, what's going to happen? Our first thought, because we didn't have, you know, we didn't know what the summer was going to be. You know, it's not like we still have a lot of clear information, but we initially said, okay, of our 7-show season, we're going to do 5 and we're going to push the opening back to July 20th, which bought us time and we could sort of figure out. And then with those 5 shows behind the scenes with all the directors and choreographers and designers, I said, we basically have to do what the gala it was. If we're going to do this financially and make it happen, unit set, you know, sort of just make it simple. So creatively that. And then, of course, we began looking at the audience experience and what the requirements were as more and more information came out. And then, you know, the other thing about the Muni is we don't just build, I mean, we create all the shows, all the sets, all the costumes, all are done there, right? But we also have to insert a theater. It's all stored at the end of the summer.
Right.
The lights, the sound. So, and that in itself in a normal season is its own 12-week process before we even start rehearsals. So part of this was then figuring out what was the shortest amount of time that we could actually get the place up and running and working back from there, which was the June 8th. Now, it was pretty clear by the end of May from all the health information and what was going on that, you know, it was not going to be responsible and smart and even possible to bring that many people together. And then, you know, rightfully so, all the unions and trades were like, what do we do about safety? And there's just a lot of unanswered questions, which, like you, we just went, oh, we're gone.
Yep.
We're toast, you know? And it's funny, when I was prepping for this interview, I mean, tomorrow night would have been our original opening night. It's always the second Monday in June. It's a glorious night here in St. Louis. And I would have been in the park taking a show. Like, it's really cool. We announced on the 8th that this was, you know, people weren't surprised, but yet the reality of it really hit people hard. The emails were like, we're missing it. And this is so, you know, so we're doing an online season starting tomorrow night at 8:15.
Tell me this.
So we're doing 5 shows where we've had a concert series, similar to what it sounds like you're going to be doing for Studio 10 for the Cabaret.
Right.
But some of our Muni artists have come back and appeared at the Sheldon Concert Hall here. So tomorrow night at 8:15, we start with Beth Level. It's totally free. You can watch it at muni.org.
The brilliant Beth Level.
Brilliant. And this show, I'd forgotten about it. We did it in 2:15, and when we were looking at the edit, I was like, oh, wow, this was a night. It's fantastic. So then we're reuniting. The second week is we did the Buddy Holly story. So those guys doing Buddy Holly music, fantastic. Then a group of our sort of male stars and female stars, and then ending up with Michaela Bennett, who was our Cinderella last season, and Alec Pracken, who had done a show. He was a Muni kid, Muni teen, and now he's on the Broadway. So just that. And then from July 20th, we're going to do 5 live nights. Stay tuned for more information on this.
Can't wait.
Those opening nights.
Well,
So
we will plug it. We will plug it on our show. I want to get all of our viewers to tune in because, again, if you can experience the Muni in any way, even if it's virtual, it is truly a treat. It is. I mean, I say it to everyone.
but also to your point, and so I want to talk to everybody who may be watching. This is great that you're doing this for your audience in Studio Tenn. But, you know, this is a point where we are asking all our friends, we need your help, right? So everybody who's watching, who's a friend of Studio Tenn, they need your help. You know, I'm sure you've got a campaign. You've got the campaign. The show will go on, right?
Yeah, the show will go on.
The goal is what?
To raise $135,000. And right now we are at 109.
Amazing. All right, everybody, you gotta finish it off. And Patrick, Joe and I are in for $500 for Studio Tenn. All right.
Oh,
So I want somebody on this now to match me. So
yeah.
just,
I love Michael.
Yes.
We need 1 million people to match him. Oh, Mike, you're fantastic.
it's really, really important. We have to be very clear. For our Muni subscribers, what we're asking them to do, if they could just donate their tickets, you know, I mean, again, it's a massive operation, and the loss is, you know, north of $4 million. You know, so this is a time for everybody. We need your help.
And you know, Mike, as you know, the one extraordinary thing. I always think there's a window. You know, the door closes in terrible, horrible situations, then windows open up. And one of the windows that, as we know, working in the theater community comes together.
I love you, I love you, Tony McAllister. He's matching me.
I love him, Tony McAllister.
The board just went up to 110.
There we go. That's yeah. It is a come together. Everybody comes together. That's why, you know, I've made this. I haven't gotten by anybody, even people that are afraid to do this. Not one person that I've asked has said, no, whatever you need. I mean, it's a come together moment. We do it. I've done it for my friends in LA who have smaller theater companies than us. It's the wonderful thing about people that work in the theater. Producers, directors, choreographers, musical directors, and actors. We are all in this together.
And you know what? I find that so fascinating because that is the root of the culture of it, right? And you've worked in Hollywood, and that's a very different culture.
Very different.
And the hierarchy is so real. And I always am amazed by anybody in the theater, actor, director, producer, whomever, who is sort of, I'm in control here, because you look around and you go, this is so obviously collaborative. Everyone's interdependent on everybody. And there is such, that is actually why, that is the primal reason I love it. You know, I mean, you can talk about that, you're responsible, but, you know, but at the end of the day, it is so communal.
Yeah.
And so actually at this moment we're all living right now, the loss of that is even more painful.
Yeah, totally agree.
So was that example. We got another match. Thank you, Meredith.
Yes. Love Meredith. Love her. Okay. Which is, I want to go now to Broadway for you, because I know you've done so much in New York and about that. And let's talk about, well, let's go to Fun Home. I want to show a little clip from Fun Home. We have a nice little trailer, and then we'll talk about that. Okay. So our trailer from Fun Home.
Daddy, comma. Hey, Daddy, come here, okay? Question mark. I need
Daddy,
you.
Daddy, come here, okay? I need you.
At the light, at the light, at the light, at the light. What are you doing, comma? I said, come here. You need
what are you doing? I said, come here.
What I tell
you need to do what I tell you to do. Listen to me. I wanna play airplane.
That you and
I wanna play airplane.
That you and
I wanna play airplane.
I wanna put my arms out and fly.
No, wait. Like Superman.
Up in the sky. Say something till I can see all of Pennsylvania. Say something.
Your swagger and your bearing at the just right clothes. You're wearing your short hair and your dungarees and your lace-up boots and your keys. Oh, your ring of keys.
And the Tony Award goes to Bravo Fun Home.
gosh, bravo. Oh, I saw you in that picture sitting up there. Now, which one of those Tony Awards is above your head? That is, I never got to see Fun Home. I have so many friends that were in it and so many people that did it. Two things. First, what was that experience like itself? And what is the difference between it being a Broadway producer versus being the St. Louis Muni Opera producer?
I mean, the experience was something I would wish for everybody in their life and career. It was one of those rare shows that, however hard it was to create and produce, and it was a real challenge because it's one of those shows everybody said, you're not really doing this, right? Like, you know, it's everybody, but everybody involved wanted it to be and felt we were on to something very special. And Janine and Lisa and Sam and Alison Bechdel, who gave us the rights to her incredible graphic novel. And just everybody, you know, it was one of those rare experiences because, you know, when you've been a part of original musicals, right? Mm-hmm. And when you're creating a new musical, literally you're spending 2 to 3 years with like 3 or 4 people in a room, right?
Right.
And then it sort of goes to 6 or 8. And then it goes to, you know, this thing that becomes exponential. But if you're lucky enough to finally get to Broadway, on that meet and greet, there's 120 people in the room, right?
Right.
You know, so, but it all begins with this thing. And what was astonishing about that show, that as everybody joined the family, living the family, so to speak, you sensed in them, oh, this requires the best of me. Quietly, gently, but everybody was doing their best work because they just were so inspired by the writing and the show and the music and the idea of it. And, you know, it was years of development and a lab production that didn't work. And then we opened off Broadway and we got these rave reviews, and people I love and trust called me and said, that's great, but you're not going to, you and Kristen aren't going to take this to Broadway, are you? Like, you're not going to do this, right? You can't do this, you know? And it was like, well, you know, and so much of it was, Sam Gold, the director, and his design team, because we literally had to recreate that show. The joke was like Fun Home 3.0, 4.0, because a different space, we had to recreate it. And there was only one Broadway theater, honestly, that was available to us. And suddenly we had to do the show in the round at Circle in the Square.
Oh, wow.
So we're basically asking our director to reconceive it. And he was like, oh, no, I think that if we're going to do it, let's do that. That is what we need to do. And so, it was an extraordinary experience. And the audiences, when they see that show, and it's being done, you know, regionally all over the place, you just know when you're getting the real deal. And, you know, I love the American musical. It's just inspired and given me a life. And it's, you know, it's a great and important and, you know, American musical that's completely in the Rodgers and Hammerstein tradition, you know, if you really know what they started with the American music, you know, I mean, sort of going through Showboat and on through, but, you know, it's in that world. And, you know, you can never predict being a part of something like that. And suddenly it happened and you're attached. And yeah, someone posted, was there ever a moment during a show that you teared up? I teared up watching the trailer, you know? But, you know,
that's 2 of us.
Yeah, it just was, it was a show that was honest in a way that usually musicals are working on this energy and this idea of, we are going to give you all this remarkable artifice to tell you the truth. Right? And that's how the form works, and it can work wildly successful at that. This level of make-believe is going to tell you primal truth. That show began with an emotional life truth, and Janine and Lisa just gave it this tensile strength, this musical dramatic strength. And, you know, Cerberus and Beth Malone and just everybody was just, you know, off the hook on their game. So, and you don't, you know, I at the end of the day, right, if we're lucky enough, to be a part of something that actually moves people.
Yeah.
That is that thing might offer them something they didn't expect, or that, and what a gift that is. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, that's why you're an artistic director.
So we do it.
That is the goal.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. Like I said, I've always wanted to see it. Oh, heck, I'd love to produce it. Look, I'd love to bring it here. You know, it's an extraordinary piece. I also want to talk about American Utopia.
Yeah.
So, because we're going to show a clip from that too. Do we have that clip coming up?
Watch out.
It's an incredible group.
I mean, everyone's fantastic musicians. Learning from everyone all the time, and everyone's energy they give out, which is led by David for sure.
This group is like a family.
We're performing, like playing our instruments as well as dancing.
Playing for New York audiences is the best.
We can kind of do a different kind of show.
Things get cooking, audience stands up, and we just totally feed off that.
David's composing is brilliant. It's like a piece of art.
It's sort of based on American R&B, but it's got all the world music components as well.
The show to me is really poetry.
It's live, it's incredible, it's all that good stuff, but it also makes you think and feel really incredible about being a person.
It brings a lot of emotions out of the performers and to the audience as well.
I hope they have a sense of optimism and hope from the show.
People might be inspired to be engaged. I think we've come to a place where we realize you can't sit back and go, oh, that'll take care of itself. It doesn't happen that way.
We are a part of the shift that's happening on Broadway, and it's pushing things beyond just what we think musical theater is, but opening up our minds to what it can be and how Broadway can house all of it. There's room for everybody.
American Utopia, difference, fun home. What was that experience like?
Yeah, it's very different. So, I mean, you know, David Byrne is David Byrne, right?
Right.
And, you know, I mean, Stop Making Sense was a big part of my life and all that. And I'd sort of lost track. So it happened because, again, I've done all my Broadway producing with this incredible, my partner woman, Kristen Cassidy. And she saw, so American Utopia was recording David made.
Mm-hmm.
And then he did a concert tour. And she saw the concert tour and we wrestle. She calls and I call. Like, we'll see something. And what? She called. She said, I just saw. Well, wait, how much time do we have? I have a really good story. Do we have
Go.
Right.
Are you kidding? I'll stay here all night.
So when we did Legally Blonde in London, I was over there and there was a night off or something. And I went to the Donmar Warehouse to see this play I hadn't heard of called Red, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I see this play and I walk out and I'm just knocked over. I just can't believe it. And I call her because the time difference, she's in New York, and I call her and she's like, hi. I go, do you trust me? She's like, yeah. I said, I just saw this play. We have to be a part of it on Broadway. We have to do it. She's like, she's like, okay. So, I mean, she didn't even see it till like first preview on Broadway, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I pick up the phone and I hear, and she'd never played the card. I hear, do you trust me? And I go, oh, is this that call? She goes, it's that call. I said, all right, we're doing it. And she said, I just saw David Byrne, American Utopia, blah, blah, blah. And now, you know, I'm a musical theater nerd. I actually know rock, but I just don't talk about it that much. There's this guy named David Byrne. I'm like, yeah, no, I did my time.
I think I know who he is.
I know what that is, you know, but it's amazing. So she said, and David, you know, was trying to figure out how to do the concert in the theater and what artistically that translation was and, and what it would be. So he had worked with Alex Timbers on Here Lies Love. So Alex was like, I'd love to shepherd this. So, you know, in that you're sort of a midwife, you know, it's David Byrne.
Yeah.
Right. So you're just going to make sure he has what he needs to figure it out and answer those questions about the difference of Broadway and how it all kind of works, because he's experienced and genius enough to know that when you go in a different culture, it's going to be a different thing. And that affects the form and the work a little bit, you know, so he figured that out. And we took it to Boston to the Colonial Theater for like 2 or 3 weeks, just so he could get the sense of it. And they moved things around and it was kind of an out of town. We sort of knew what it was. And brought it to New York, and it had this astonishing impact on people.
Hmm.
It really was everyone sitting in their seats sitting down going, okay, what is this? And David being David, he's not going to tell you what it is, but by the end of it, you're going to know.
Hmm.
And something extraordinary. And the communion between him and the dancers and the musicians and the technology involved, it released in people this childlike humanity that was just startling. Like people left their giddy. And it was one of those rare shows that I've ever worked on that was an immediate word of mouth, like, oh, we can pull back on the advertising, here we go.
Mm-hmm.
Like that. It was one of those things that people went home from the theater and emailed 10 people, go, you've got
to go see this, right?
You've got to see this type thing, which is just magical. And so, we're going to bring it back.
So great.
Yeah.
In this little interview, like I said to you before, Sensei, I've gotten to learn so much as an artistic director, as a producer. Your experience and your eloquence in terms of how you communicate to somebody like me, but to our audience is, well, it's Mike Isaacson, and it's a gift, my friend. I want to wrap up basically just your thoughts about when do we get to resume? What do you think it's going to take? I know Broadway is different than maybe even the Muni, than is what Studio Tenn, you know what I mean? But I'd like to just sort of get your overall thoughts about where we are and where we need to be, and hopefully when we might get there.
Yeah. Well, here's what was fascinating. Like all during the process of making the decision for the Muni, we were surveying our subscribers, and overwhelming every age demographic, everything was, we'll be there. You tell us how we need to be and what we need to do, we will be there.
Hmm.
Like it surprised me, over the top. So, and again, I stress that, people said, oh, we really miss this. Like our audiences and people are missing each other. They're missing something. And and that's a good thing, because the second it's available to them, here they come.
They're in, right?
They're in. And we're all going to sit there, like for the first time we see a piece of theater, and just, I get goosebumps even thinking about that moment, right? Mm-hmm. So I believe in the future. I have no doubt about the future whatsoever. When is going to be up to the science, and when it's going to be two things. It's going to be between the science and also people have an understanding of the real risk they may or may not be taking, right?
Correct.
It's all over the place right now. It depends on where you live and what that is.
The uncertainty, it's because
Right.
It changes from day to day.
Right. I think all sort of Broadway and is really pushing for, December, the beginning of next year to get
Right.
on that. And I believe that will be in place because there will be enough information about the virus where we'll have a greater sense of risk. Hopefully there'll be one of two things, or maybe both: better palliative medications.
Mm-hmm.
If you contract it, the implications for those who are the highest risk are less severe.
Right.
And then the other thing is, the early stages of a vaccine, which, depending on who you read, there's a lot of optimism that there's something by the end of the year.
Yeah.
So I think we're all hanging on that. But there may be a period where, to come into a theater, you got to wear a mask. And you know what? There'll be 1,000 people wearing a mask. They'll be fine.
Okay.
You may have seen, and there's videos out about this South Korean production of.
Yes. And I was talking about this with our board members or staff. And I think each individual has to go through some sort of spray, like each audience member.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going. It's going.
Yeah. I think also, what's very hard right now is that, both my parents, my dad has dementia, so he's in a memory care unit.
Mm-hmm.
My mom's in sort of an apartment that's nearby him, but you know, every senior, they're on lockdown, right?
My mother, 86, same thing. Mm-hmm.
And it's just the isolation. It's so horrible. But, you know, and it's always bothered me because, you know, people can get very ageist about the demographic of theater. And my point is always believed that there's certain art forms or certain mediums that you meet later in life because you need a certain amount of life experience to really understand them.
Mm-hmm.
Always thought about theater. And then, you know, demographically and stuff, they all come running in our doors as soon as the kids are out of the house, right? Because when you've got small children, you don't have time for anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all that comes into play, and I want those people to be able to come back to the theater. You know, there may be an interim period if you look at some other countries where they're letting some demographics and people out freer, but they're still saying we want to keep our seniors safer. So there may be a middle ground, you know, from what I'm reading.
And I think everything that you said is right. I think, and with more, the people feeling safer or the fear sort of dissipating, I think people are just yearning, and that's going to build to get back and see something. Mm-hmm. I mean, to have that experience. And I do believe that the safety features will get better. And I do believe that we'll have more knowledge about that. Maybe, you know, it's not as bad as we thought, or it's going to get less, and God willing, a vaccine of some, or like you said, how to treat it.
Yeah. And it's really hard right now because there's all kinds of information, and some of it you can make sense of, and some of it's, you know, and again, that makes sense because, you know, we've had periods before when viruses, you know, during, you know, the first 10 years of the AIDS crisis, it was a virus. Yep. Information was conflicting.
How do you get it? I was there. I was in New York. I've talked about that too.
How, you know, so it takes a while for us to get enough information, get the data, let, you know, the scientists be able to study and go, oh, it's this. The good news is, I do believe this is, there's literally a worldwide effort at this right now.
Totally. Every brilliant mind on the planet. Yeah.
And you know, the public money, the corporate money, you know, the foundations, everybody knows all hands on deck. So, I mean, there's 139 vaccines in various stages of trials right now.
Right.
So all we need is one.
All we need is one. Mike Isaacson, you are a gem and a great everything. And I can't thank you enough for being here and doing this hour with us for here at Studio 10. We are lucky to have you. I am lucky to learn from you, and I will call you more and more as I engage here. And like I said to you at the beginning, anything you need, I'm there for you, my friend.
You too.
You're the best.
All right. Thank you so much. This was wonderful. It's a lovely way to spend a Sunday night.
Oh, you're awesome, Mike. Love to you. Love to everyone.
Bye-bye.
Oh, what a night. We are so lucky. Studio 10, we are so lucky to have Mike Isaacson, to have had Scott Ellis last week. And next week, I believe we have Mr. Norm Lewis. In case you don't know who that is, Norm Lewis was in the 25th anniversary of Les Miserables. He was Javert. You might have seen him on television when John Legend did Jesus Christ Superstar. He played Caiaphas. He has done 13 Broadway shows. He was Porgy, and Porgy and Bess was Tony nominated for it. He's an incredible singer. He will be a tremendous asset. Tell us what's going on in New York and what's going on with him. Again, please, we can't sell tickets right now. We need your effort to jump in. You saw what Mike gave as a donation, and we saw matches. We so appreciate it here. We are just going to keep producing content for you virtually. We are here. Studio 10 is here. We are going to rebuild, and we as a theater community are all going to come together and perform once again for you guys. I always come up with a song to say goodbye, and tonight I think I'm going to do a Billy Joel song. Good night, my angel, time to close your eyes and save these questions for another day. Good night, ladies and gentlemen.